All right. Thank you for joining me. My name is Eric Wright, and this is a special episode of Puppet Time Online. This is the second live from the work desk episode. And that means I've got my work desk all set up. Got an overhead cam so you guys can all see. And I've got to work on some projects. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to show you all what my work process is like and what my setup is like. And if you have questions, you are welcome to send me those. I've got a little screen over here so I can see your comments and questions pop up, and hopefully I'll try and answer everything. So it's been an exciting time over here. The first big thing that I want to say is the last Live at the Workbench episode that we did. I was working on the Little Orchestra Society's Hansel and Gretel. And that is now complete. All the filming is done. It's in the editing room right now, and it is set to stream on the Little Orchestra Society website on December 12th. I'll put that up here so you can see. It's going to be really, really good. I saw a rough cut of it a couple of days ago, and it is I'm really, really happy with how it came out. It's really silly. There's some great music. It's the Engelbert Humperdinck opera. It's like selections from the Engelbert Humperdinck opera with a script written by Craig Sherman, and it's all performed wonderfully. And I'm really proud of the puppets that we made. So I just want to show you some of the things on how the puppets came out. Here, I'll just put this up as a scroll across the bottom so you guys can see what we're looking at. But you might remember last time we created the witch puppet. Last time we created the witch as dressed as the Sandman. This is the original witch puppet, and I'll just put this up on the screen here. So there she is. And just to sort of recap, we can talk a little bit about how this was made. In a lot of ways, I'm, as usual, figuring things out as I'm going. But this is just a lot of different pieces that I made from a sketch. I made a sketch on a piece of paper and then used this tool, which is it's like an embossing tool. It's also used for like making perfect little dots of paint. Use that to emboss onto the colored paper and then cut that out and put them together with these little pre-die cut little foam dots, self-adhesive foam dots. And so that gave it a little bit of dimension to it. You can see there's a little bit of dimensionality to it. The trick was getting this to be a paper puppet that was two-sided, so it could enter scenes and also, turn around and leave scenes. That also had a moving mouth mechanism, which I think turned out really, really nicely. But the way that this works is that the whole puppet is supported on this long bamboo dowel, and I found these long. It's not really a dowel; it's a long bamboo piece that I found on Amazon. And then the little bits and pieces that are a little more specific, I used these wooden stir sticks, just like coffee stir sticks. So this bamboo piece is connected to like the main body of the puppet. That's like the main support piece. And then this coffee stir stick runs all the way up and is connected to the jaw. There's a couple of these like metal brads that you would use for holding paper together that I sort of bent out of shape as brackets to hold things in place and places to secure this little rubber band. And this little rubber band also has this additional function of holding this stir stick in place against this other one so that it doesn't move out of shape, right? So these brackets are keeping it from flying off of the control, and these are keeping it sort of in the right orientation as it moves up and down. And then I literally just put a dot of hot glue at the end of this for the for the control, so I can like feel where the control is. I could grab it anywhere, but like this is a more comfortable place to control it. And then I just made the same thing on the other side, put the same coffee stir stick on the other side connected to the other jaw, and used these little brads to connect the two of them together in addition to sort of being guides. So it works pretty well. You know, it like does the job. It probably could be made cleaner and easier, but on the other hand, it's pretty rudimentary materials, and I was able to get them pretty easily, and I could see how it would work in my mind. I think that was the important part, was that I could actually like envision what it was supposed to look like. So I made those puppets. Then I would also make a bunch of the accessories for the puppets on bamboo skewers that were separate pieces. So for every puppet, they had a couple different hands in different shapes. Now, and the hands are made so that you can tell the difference between the palm of the hand with the thumb there and the back of the hand. So we could use them on either side. And that meant there was a lot of hands and a lot of different pieces. Every character had to have a bunch of hands in different positions. There were specialty hands here when she's like reading a book. You sort of built those hands onto the book. And so a lot of different pieces, like everything was built to the shot that we needed, with the exception of the puppets themselves, which carried a lot of weight, in that, you know, a lot of what they needed to do was just sort of walk around and lip sync to the existing tracks. The other thing I wanted to show you is, and then also some of those were rigged up with lights. I found these really great little battery packs and these tiny, tiny little LEDs that are really nothing more than just the LED on top connected to two leads. So when those are all put together and I soldered those together, they would be a little tiny little light that's really just enough to give a little bit of magic to the end of the witch's broom, so she can cast spells like this. Everything would ride sort of at the bottom of frame like this, and we'd manipulate them like that. So I'm really happy with how those turned out. Then everything was, then we made these amazing backgrounds on a big sheet of paper. So let's see if I can show you these in the wide angle first. So this is just a giant piece of watercolor paper. And I worked with Jamie Bressler, who's an excellent puppet builder, to do these backgrounds. I would draw out the background that I wanted to see, the scene that I wanted to see, and then sort of like a paint by number say, this is going to be this is going to be this color, this is going to be this color. And I drew in all of the black outlines, then handed it over to Jamie, and she cut out all of the places that needed to be colored in, and actually on the back put colored pieces of paper so that they would sort of match the aesthetic of the show as a whole. The gingerbread was all represented with cardboard in this case, and the windows are all wax paper to give us so that we could light things from behind and get a really nice window effect, while still sort of staying in the same aesthetic as something that was handmade, and that you could theoretically see how you could make it at home, which was kind of the idea. But I'm really happy with how these came out. We would then put this down on the table, this very table that we're filming this on, and the characters would play on top of them. I'll show you how that looks. Like this, the characters would play on top. Now there's a little something funny going on with my camera, that it doesn't seem to want to export the right frame or the right aspect ratio, so everything looks a little squashed. But this is sort of what the look of the show ended up being in the end, which I feel like is really nice. It's sort of hopefully the idea is that it plays with your idea of the perspective, and with this you sort of forget that you're looking straight down, which lets us set characters in place. Because I was the only puppeteer on the show for the majority of it, there was a lot that I had to negotiate around only having two hands to work with. So I got around that by using some sort of clever edits, so that some characters, whoever was moving the most or whoever was the focus of the scene, would be the one that I would be manipulating. The other characters would be sort of still. It's not ideal, but it really, in the edit, you don't actually notice it that much. So I thought I would show you all how that turned out. I'm pretty pleased with how it went. There was still a huge learning process in trying to figure out what that was going to be, or how it would work. Ultimately, these backgrounds couldn't set just directly on the table. I built this giant cardboard box as a stand. And this raised up the backgrounds about 4 inches off the table. It also has a hole in it so that we can light things from the underside, like from the inside of the windows. And it had the additional effect of being able to let us zoom in and sort of shift from one side of the frame to the other side of the frame to catch different camera angles. It made, when we locked this down to the table, it made sure everything was registered in the right location every time. It really helped with multi-day shoots. But it's just built out of cardboard and hot glue. So I'm really happy with how that turned out. And so that leads us into the next project, which is going to be shot. There's just going to be another short film shot in this same style on this same rig. So before I get into that, definitely check out the Little Orchestra Society version of Hansel and Gretel. It starts streaming on December 12th. It's going to be incredible. The music is, as usual, amazing. The performances are really great, and I'm really happy with how the puppets came out. So you should check it out. So so the next thing that I'm getting into is it's a short film of my own creation. It was made possible by a grant from Heather Henson's Handmade Puppet Dreams project, and I'll put the link to their website up here. This is a great collection of films that Heather Henson's Ibex company curates every so often. And this year they wanted to continue to support artists, and so they developed a series of mini commissions for movies made exclusively in quarantine. So since about the middle of quarantine, I've been working on developing this short film. And now we're in the process of actually making the thing. And it's the script is all developed, the storyboard is all done. And now it's just the process of turning it into an actual show that can be filmed. And then from there, we'll be in post-production and editing and turning it into a final product. A lot of the Handmade Puppet Dreams films stream on Amazon Prime Video when they're all released. And hopefully that is the case for this one as well. So I'm excited about that. So I can show you a little bit about what's going on with that and tell you sort of where I'm at. A lot of today is really an unvarnished look at where I'm at in the process. And, as usual, there's a lot of making it up as I go along. But as for those of you that tuned in last week with my conversation with Tim, or a couple weeks ago with my conversation with Tim, he really stressed the idea of doing your homework and doing your planning before you get into production, before you get under the camera, because that will save you just a huge amount of headache. So that's sort of where I'm at. I'm doing a little bit of testing and sort of camera tests as to how I want to create this, thinking through my experience in Hansel and Gretel and how this project will be different. Because it is different in some ways, even though the setup is relatively the same. I would like the look to be a little bit different, and I would like it to function a little bit differently. And some of that is story driven, and some of that is just taste driven. But we can maybe talk through some of those things, and hopefully that's helpful. Again, if you have questions about anything while I'm working, this is your chance to chime in. I hate working in a vacuum, so I really like that. It's great to see that you're all here and watching. And if you have anything you want to learn about or ask questions about, don't hesitate to chime in. I want to start by, I think maybe I'll show you the storyboard as it's currently standing. I can just show you a little bit of that because I have it as a digital version. And now I want to stress that I pride myself on my drawing abilities. And for those of you who are thinking about doing a storyboard, and you, like me, have seen a lot of behind the scenes movie making, and you are impressed, like me, at the skill and artistry of storyboard artists, I would want to tell you to draw what you know first, regardless of how good that might look, or regardless of how polished those drawings might be. Let's see if we can make this a little bigger for you. I do pride myself on my artistic abilities, but this is not necessarily the place where I want to put my finished renderings of every frame. The purpose of this storyboard is to get the ideas out there and to get an overall sense of what the scope of this movie is going to be. So I can tell you a little bit about what we're looking at here. I made a template in an app called GoodNotes that I use for a lot of quick sketches before I go into design renders. This is like, it's a little bit easier than Procreate, which I use for my finished designs and drawings. In that it draws shapes. I can switch between tools much quicker. It's got good support for text and selections and things like that. It just works a little bit easier for me. So I use that for quick designs. And I made a quick template here that just shows a frame, and then it has a space for some descriptions. And then over on the side here has an area that shows what kind of a shot it is. And this is one thing that came in really, really handy on Hansel and Gretel, was that we had a limited number of backgrounds. We had a limited number of camera lenses that we can use. It was all shot on an iPhone 11 Pro. And so it has the basic wide angle and the telephoto angle or telephoto lens, and then like a zoomed in version of both of those. The ultra wide lens was not something that we could use on this one. So this is our way of tracking how each of the backgrounds are being used, or how each of the shots are set up. So this is a wide angle, a medium, a 2-shot, a 1-shot, or an insert. And those are just basically how much information are we using. And in some cases, it's what lens are we shooting on. The next step after this is that I will go in and start grouping shots into backgrounds or scenery setups that I need to construct. There will be hopefully fewer scenery builds than there are puppet builds in this show. And so I want to figure out just what I need to build and what I can reuse over and over. So, this is a wide angle sort of establishing shot, or like overview shot of just the woods itself. And then it has a couple of moving elements to kind of give you the sense that we're zooming in and like sort of bringing us to this place. And then there's a couple of puppets in here, a little bird and a fish and a rabbit that sort of let you know that it's alive, establish the idea that it's a puppet show, and give you a sense of what we're in for. And then like a quick something funny here. I have a bear eating the fish. Something funny here that's like, okay, this has got a little bit of a twist. Like, this is establishing the tone of what the show is going to be, which is bright, colorful, cheerful, in the style of an old fable or a children's story, but with a little bit of a dark turn to it. That's like the first three moments of the show. Along the side here are the lines that are being spoken. So the way that we filmed, or the way that we set this up, is probably not the standard way of setting up a puppet show. And most of that was because I was trying to work with the way that I knew how to do a thing, rather than trying to learn how to make a film the way films are traditionally made. So I was drawing on my experience of actually making Puppet Slam short pieces for Puppet Playlist, where I would have an existing audio track, and then I would need to build to that in order to make a show. So the audio track for me, it's always easier to put that parameter on myself, where I can say, well, this is the audio I have to work with, and there's very little that I can do to sort of break out of that structure. And that is super useful to me, because if I'm just given a free range to just have 8 minutes of time, I really don't know where to start. So for this project, I did the script first. I did a couple of rounds of revision on the script, and then I sent the script to the actor who's doing the voiceover. Is a fellow by the name of Aaron Harrington, who's an excellent actor that I met doing Little Shop of Horrors. He was set to be the voice of Audrey 2 before the quarantine set in and we all had to shut down. But so he's got a great voice. He's got a real great range, and I really wanted him to be the voice of this story. And he voices the narrator and the fox and the wolf and the birds and all of the different characters. So I gave the finished script to him, and he recorded a voiceover in a couple of different ways. He recorded a couple takes just as a straight read through of the script, switching between voices as best he could, and then did a couple of takes where he would read all of the lines of one character, then all the lines of another character, then all the lines of another character, and sent all of that back to me, and I edited it back into a single track. And from there, I was able to get a sense of what the whole piece sounded like. I was able to imagine what the cuts were going to sound like in some ways. Was able to sort of tighten everything up as much as I wanted, and then I would know how long the movie would be. We're really aiming for an 8-minute short film here. My first edit came in at 10 minutes. I had to go back and sort of re-look at that edit, sort of throw out some of my favorite parts, but that's kind of how editing goes. So went back in, edited it down to, I think, 7 minutes 30. And from there, I've sent it to the music department. And in this case, the incredible John Dyer is doing the music for the movie. So he's going to take that vocal track and essentially put it into his mix as a musician and lay the score down on top of the vocal track as it exists, so that he can then send it back to me. I'll probably do a little bit of fine tuning, add some sound effects and Foley, and then that will be the final audio track for the movie, which I will then use to perform to. So this is sort of how we did Hansel and Gretel as well. So we had the finished audio track, or at least a rough edit of the audio track, which then I would perform to that exact audio track. That was not going to change the way that audio was set up. And that's the case here, which is good. It gives me a little bit of structure so that I know what it is I have to do and what I'm performing to. I don't have to do this live. I don't have to perform it live. So I'm going to perform it for the film. I'm going to create something that only exists as a film. So that's sort of where I'm at. So John has the vocal track right now. He's working on music. While he's doing that, I'm going to be building and making things. So hopefully the music comes back around the same time that I'm ready to film. and we'll be set to go. And so the first thing I do is a lot of different tests. So in looking at this storyboard, again, I'm looking for similarities among all of these panels. I sort of drew this as a comic book, and I will continue to go in and refine it, but you'll see like in blue, I'm adding in some things that I think are like 1 or 2 actions for every frame. So like one way to do this is that we could build every one of these squares as a separate little shadow box that we film. It just has 1 or 2 actions, and then like we film it, we play the track along with it so that we know that we get the timing right, and then that's that scene. It may not cut together exactly right, and some of this in construction, I will be thinking about how can we simplify this, how can we make things flow more readily from one thing to the next, and what's actually possible to do. I drew this really fast so that I could get a sense of how close we were going to be, what the main action of the scene was. And then like, here's some lines that we cut, that we're just going to get rid of, which is super helpful to know about. But it gives you a sense of like what that frame should look like. Again, if this was a real storyboard, the first thing I would be doing is I'd draw a box that was the actual like aspect ratio that I'm going to film in. That's one of the first things I'm going to do is translate these boxes into 16:9, which is what we're filming in. It's a little more cinematic look, but it does change what that picture is going to look like. So I have to do that. So there's a little bit of translation. The next step is a little bit of translation. But it does give you a sense of, what's happening, how close we are, what needs to get seen in each frame in order to get the story across, and what we could sort of get away with. So like, for instance, for these establishing shots, we need to know where Fox's house is here in the bramble patch and where it is in relation to the lake and the forest. And like, we need to establish that that's where it is. These scenes that are sort of closer with the wolf, we may not need to see too much in the background. Once we've seen where he lives and like what the color scheme is here, we could, on these closer shots, we might be able to get rid of a lot of that information so that we're focusing more on this character. We'll see. I don't know yet. But that's what I'm going to try and figure out. Let me show you where we're at. I'll put I'm going to put the overhead camera back on here. And I'll show you where we're at so far. The very first version of Fox and Wolf that I made, this is the very first version of Wolf that I made. And you can see it was just like an idea of what this might look like if he's a real simple character. He's got a little tape on him here. Real simple shapes, real simply sort of cut out of paper, a little bit about the scale and how big he is. But you can see he's very thin. He doesn't show up on camera that great. Can't really see his little whiskers here. It doesn't have any movement built into him, and in some instances, it's actually like more complicated than it needs to be. Like his little toes in here, you may not need any of that to get the idea of the character across. So here's the next version of Wolf, like this. As you can see, he's much smaller. And part of the reason for that is I think that I'm going to have to make a lot more. That's part of the reason, is that I think I'm going to have to make a lot more wolf puppets. And so to save resources, I'm going to make them a little smaller. And I actually like, in my storyboard, there's much less detail in the actual drawing, and I kind of love how that looks. Also, in filming Hansel and Gretel, I noticed that when the puppets are much closer, I don't think you can see it all that well on this particular camera because it's kind of crummy. But the texture that you can see in the paper is really great. And the way that it's lit, you can really get a nice shadow, and that texture really comes through. So it's kind of built to the scale of the texture of the paper. If it were built at this size, you'd have a harder time seeing that texture. And I really wanted to accentuate that, really play that forward. The other thing you'll notice is that this wolf doesn't have the little white outline that this wolf does. And that was something that, again, came out of Hansel and Gretel. And then I just really like the look of this white outline. It reminds me of sort of the trend of stickers that you're seeing nowadays. And I really thought that these would make nice stickers, but in looking at all those cool stickers, I was like, oh, that really helps this stand out from the background. It really gives it its own little separation, and it looks like, I don't know, it sort of pulls it forward in a nice way. So I think I'm going to try keeping that on these. It also became handy later when we did moving mouthpieces for Hansel and Gretel, that it was, I could do 2 layers of white and sort of sandwich all the mechanism inside. This is just taped to a bamboo skewer for now, just to kind of experiment with what it's going to look like. And then the other thing that is different on here is that the wolf has this like white outline for his eyes. And that was one thing that I was a little unhappy with this one, is that his eyes really just disappear. And that's going to be so important in sort of conveying, especially with limited movement in these puppets. If it's really just like a popsicle stick puppet, the expression on the character's face is going to be even more important. So for now, I have these are removable. At the moment, it's just like a little loop of blue tape on the back, so that I could potentially make 1 million of these and then draw different expressions on them and swap them out. Very similar to how stop motion animators would work. The same is true for his little mouth. Like, it's a little blue tape loop so that you can swap out the mouth, but different expressions on his face. The arm is removable. It's like its own piece that's just stuck on there for now. So like that could change. Right now, the only thing that's locked together is his tail and his body and his head. But even then, we might be able to get away with a lot of these, like cutting out a lot of these shapes and making a lot of different puppets, or slightly modifying the body shape, cutting out a couple of those, and then and working from there. I think what I'm tending towards is somewhere in between building a shadow box for every frame of my storyboard and building puppets that can do everything or do all of the moves. So it's going to be sort of like one action or move per frame, or a couple of actions per frame, like one transformation or something like that. So let's talk about those frames. Put this guy back. So this is my first pass, and literally I was just finishing this up yesterday. It's my first pass at what the frames might look like with my first version of Fox. I'm going to take him out for the moment, but he's built very similarly to Wolf in that he's got removable mouth and eyepieces. His hand is just attached to the back, but could be moved, and he's temporarily attached to a wooden skewer here. Now, it looks really nice as a just white on white paper shadow box. It's hard to not get attached to your mock-ups sometimes. I don't think that this should be the final version, but it looks good. I'm happy with like this idea of white on white. I could take that further and really pull out textures instead of colors. I think that ultimately there should be some color in the background, but it shouldn't be enough to detract from the main characters. Hopefully the white border on each character will really help. Now, the way that I sort of discovered how to make this, which was really a discovery, was also similar to the rest of my process, which is like, what do I have right now, and how can I best use that to what I'm trying to get at? And what I mean by that is, what I have right now is a big pad of paper. Like I have a big Bristol board pad of paper that's, I think it's 11 by 24 or something like that. It's a big sheet. And I thought, well, okay, well, I don't necessarily think we need to use one page per thing, because we're going to have a lot of these frames, a lot of these boxes. So what if we fold them in half? And then I started playing with that, and it ended up being like pretty close to the right aspect ratio. When you actually zoom in on this, let's see what we can get here. It's a pretty dramatic slow zoom, isn't it? Here we go. Like the aspect ratio is like pretty good. I like how these trees come out of that frame. It gives it like, I really wanted to build some more depth into these scenes than we had on Hansel and Gretel, which is basically just a flat background. So this gives us some nice opportunities, both in just like a wide shot like this that kind of establishes the toy theater look. One where the frame of the camera is the frame of the toy theater, but you still get to layer things on top of each other really nice and sort of see that depth all the way down. And then, I don't know, maybe there's some shots that we have where we play with some angles this way, and we sort of lean into the fact that it's a constructed place, and we could kind of set up the scene this way to get something a little bit more off kilter. I don't know, something to play with. But each of these layers is made out of a half of a sheet of the big sheet of paper. And that gives me, with 2 sheets of paper, that gives me 4 layers. It gives me a nice box that's essentially 2 inches thick. And like that looks pretty good. And as a bonus, like they all stacked together, each of the 4 layers. You can see each of the 4 layers. They all stacked together like this. On each of the sides, they were all glued together, so they would stay together as a box. On the bottom, I left those torn bottom edges open, and that ended up being a nice way to put puppets into the scene. Like that, and like that. So that they can kind of stay in place a little bit. Again, same kind of idea as Hansel and Gretel, where like I could theoretically let go of one character and just move the other one if I needed both hands, or drop one character without too much life disappearing. So again, it's like very classic toy theater, very classic, sort of a nice old-fashioned look that I really like. And you can see these bamboo skewers just stick out from the bottom. How they come out like that. It also offers the possibility of putting the puppets in different planes of movement. So if I wanted one way in the front, one way in the back, I could do that as well, depending on how it plays. So that's sort of where I'm at right now, is like, I'm thinking, okay, this box seems really good. I think we could go more with the depth of it? Maybe. Do we need to? I don't know. Making these boxes out of one sheet of paper seems needlessly complex. What will probably be the solution is that I will find something that is this thickness. Like I'm pretty sure that I have a whole heap of L200 in this thickness. So I don't have to worry about the paper doing the work of, making the thickness of the box. And it can just be for planes. It could just be for the playing surfaces. So I'll probably be cutting a lot of these windows and then mounting strips of foam in between them. And that will also free up that will also put a different kind of grip on the puppets themselves. It will probably keep them a little flatter because they'll be against an entire piece of foam rather than a single edge of piece of paper. So something like that is probably likely. And the next thing is also to experiment with colors and to see how colors actually translate in this place. My instinct is to do any colors with cut paper because I'm not that talented at painting and I don't really know how. It would be cool if they were watercolor, but I don't really have that capability right now. What I do have is I have some ability to do cut paper. That might actually be what we do today. So before we dig into that, if there's any questions you guys have, type them in the chat about anything I've covered so far. Once I get into building and stuff, it's going to be, a lot less talking and a lot more sounds of paper cutting, but who knows? Oh, I didn't even show you these Hansel and Gretel props. They're so cute. I'm really happy with how these Hansel and Gretel props came out. Little tiny pieces of paper. Little mice, little socks. A thing of cream. Really happy with how they came out. They also, there's tons of little bits of paper that were applied to the puppets themselves. Like these are some sleepy eyes for Hansel and Gretel. So I really like the look of this paper on paper. And so I think I'm going to try something like that for the backgrounds. Again, this is all kind of the screen test part of making this. But I think maybe a good thing to do would be to reproduce some of these elements in color. Since we already have these elements, that might be the best thing. So let's start with some trees, probably. I've got my box of paper over here. A lot of this is scraps from other shows. So just one or two cuts out of each thing. That looks like a good tree. Let's make this a night scene. So let's do a dark blue background maybe. Let's do some sort of dark greenish. That might be nice. Do we want to just do some brown hills? It's not bad. This is then looking like way too bright, right? Darker, that might be useful. In some ways, this feels like going through your box of tubes of paint, right? So I'm really just building the palette first for this particular scene. Is this a different color? Yeah. Like that. Yeah, look at that one. That's lovely. Love that color. Okay. Oh, and we need a cream color or something for the moon. Maybe we just use some. What are these other browns too? I wonder if those would be good. These are all white. I really want a cream off-white something. What's that? Kind of interesting. That looks a little too yellowish, yellow to green, maybe. I don't know, maybe. Let's try it. Let's see what that looks like. It might actually be kind of beautiful. Okay, so we got our palette, sort of. These are good. Do I want something different than that? Well, let's try it. Let's try it. Okay. Again, who knows? But let's start with the easy stuff and work our way to the more difficult things. Is this going to fit? Oh, I might have ruined it, but because it looks like this is just barely, this box is just a little bit bigger than 12 inches. It is. It's like 12 and 3/4, 12 and a half. That's all right. We're going to make do. I'm going to get rid of this. Okay. And let's see. Yeah, so that's my background. Let's remake this with this guy. Actually, what we could do, since it's not the right size, we could just we can mount this to this piece of paper, which is the right size. I don't think you'll see the edges anyway. I'm using my embossing tool here just because I'm not sure exactly which side I'm going to use, and I don't like to leave pencil marks, especially when you're working with paper and the paper is going to be your finished look. You don't want to like smear graphite all over, because once you start working with pencil, then there's graphite on your fingers, and that ends up on the face of your puppet right before an important close-up. It's happened too many times. Okay. So there's our background. That's nice. Why don't we just tape it down? We're just experimenting here, so let's see what that looks like. I like this blue tape because it's not destructive to the paper in any way. And it's relatively inexpensive. I'm sure you all can hear how noisy my apartment is. It's not great for broadcasting, but you're never alone in New York. Okay, here, let's try the moon. Let's make a little... Just checking where the texture is for this one. If I was really concerned about the moon being perfectly round, I would make sure to use a compass or a circle tool or something, but I kind of like when everything has a little bit of a homemade look to it. Okay, and for those who were with me last time, I do a rough cut first so that I have less in my hands, and then I do the final cut. I don't know if you can actually even see the embossing line that I've made on the paper, because I can barely see it. But I'm just carefully following that line as best I can. Even though you're not marking with a pencil, it's good to get in the habit of making your tracing lines on the back of your material. But in this case, I think it's not too big of a deal. There we go. Okay, there's our moon. I don't know, should we get a little texture to it? Should we make it a little bit more interesting to look at? What if we did this? What if we cut a second? This might be kind of cool. Let's see. Do some of that. Okay. So like, we've got that. But this one is going to have a bunch of cuts in it that give it a bunch of craters. It's not bad. think just a couple more. It's pretty good. Maybe one right here. Oh, that's something. Rough version anyway. Okay. And then we'll use the dots to give it a little bit of shadow. It's actually probably fine. The test fit. Looks good. Okay, there we go. It's got some cool dimension to it. Got a little shadow to it. That looks nice. Let's put a little loop on the back. We'll place that in our, let's put that in our box. Okay. So, here. That's nice. Let's get this guy on there. Not bad. Okay, that's kind of interesting. Let's do these hills here. Did I glue those in? Let's see. Oh yeah, I did. Okay. That one's in back, and front, tree, and why did I glue these in? Don't know. Later things that I did, I wasn't thinking straight. Okay. So let's see. Which one's going to be first? Which one's going to be second? Probably like... I know we only have two shapes here, but I wonder if one of them is, if there's going to be like a little path on one of them, or both of them. That might be kind of nice. That looks kind of good. So let's make this one the front, and then this one the back, and then we'll do some path with this one. Okay. So we'll just put it right here in the corner. This one I probably won't do a rough cut first just because it's a pretty big piece. Oh, and you know what? I did not get in the habit of making this on the correct side. I totally bungled that one. These pages have different textures. Well, it does, but it's not a very pronounced texture, so we might be okay. That's a bummer. Here we are. It's just a test. All right, so that one, we're not going to do this. We're not going to make that mistake on this guy, though. The one in back, which is this guy, we said, make sure we have texture on the right side. This one. Let's cut this one. Okay. So now we've got these two characters. Want to do anything with this guy on them? I don't know. I kind of liked how they layered in. Maybe we just add a little hill in the background there. And that one already looks kind of nice. Let's do like that, kind of even it out. So we're not gonna kind of rough through it here. That one looks nice, or does it look better? Yeah, that looks okay, like that. So we're gonna use this one here as a guide and just cut the same size out. And we'll be able to modify it later. You know, I would be more concerned about saving paper here, but the pieces are big enough that, like, if I don't like it, I could probably use these actual pieces as scrap for another piece. But this will just give us some options. Okay. So those are our hills there. That looks kind of nice. And should we do our trees right away while we're here? Why not? We'll put everything together. Left tree, right tree. What do we have here? These were pretty bright. This was less bright. Should we keep it toned down, or I'm also looking at it on camera just to see what it picks up. Oh, let's try and tone down. Let's try the tone down one. This one's coming off much brighter. Now that I see it in context, like, it looks so much brighter than everything else and doesn't really play itself into being a night scene. All right, let's just see if we can get both of these on the same page. Yeah, we'll be fine. We'll do it like that. Something like that. And since these are going to be so close together, let's put this one in there as well before we cut it out. Okay. Looks good. I'm gonna put little arrows on these so remember this one goes that way. And this one's gonna go that way. Okay. We'll do our rough cuts first. Okay. Okay. Great. Now we've got trees. And now we can put them in the shadow box. Let's see how it looks. Okay. So first thing we have to do is figure out where that extra one is going to go. Sorry, you guys can't see that very well, but neither can I. All right. I think, because we cut an extra piece. So I think that one might go on the, maybe it goes up against the, oh no. Yeah, on the near side. Okay. And then this one will go on the next one in. And this one will go on the next one. Okay. Means there's not going to be that much distance between these. Come on now. There we go. Let's get much closer. Maybe we'll do a curved thing. Maybe try and curve it. That might be kind of cool. Okay. So first things first, let's get that back one in a nice way. I think we can use these dots. That's no problem. I do have double-sided foam tape on a roll, but it doesn't, I don't know, it's so much easier to just peel these dots away. It's also really satisfying. Unless you have that condition where it's difficult to look at groupings of holes. Do you guys know about this? It's a real thing. I have friends who have it. It's like difficult to look at holes, or like a whole thing of it sounds strange, but like it makes people feel uncomfortable to like look at a whole thing of like a page full of holes. I don't know what to tell you. I forget. It's got a real name. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna put this thing in, and I'm gonna try and curve it a little bit when I do. So that means I'm gonna push it a little more. So I'm gonna attach it sort of nearby on one side, and then I'm gonna kind of push so that the piece is a little bit bigger than it. So it takes up a little bit more room than it wants to. Like that. You see how it gives a nice like little curl? I don't know. Maybe you'll see it. Maybe you won't. See how it's curled in there? So front to back. I guess we could try and do it that way. That might be kind of nice. Let's put a little dot in there so it pulls the front of it close here. So we're just going to lift up that edge that way. Like that. So now you can see that curl. Yeah. That's cool. Okay. Next one goes in. This guy. I guess we could put some kind of curl into each one of these. I like finding just like whatever kind of dimension I can in these is useful. Some of it will be intentional, some of it will be accidental. Okay, put that in. Oh, I did it on the wrong side. Definitely did it on the wrong side. That one goes. Yeah, I did. I put these dots on the front rather than the back. I was distracted by the last one. These should go this way. But if I'm careful, I might be able to salvage it. There we go. Oh, yes, Olga, thank you for chiming in. Trypophobia is an aversion to the sight of irregular patterns or clusters of small holes or bumps. See, Olga's got it. So if you have that, avert your eyes because looking at this would probably be uncomfortable for you. I'm just saying, it's a real thing. Thanks, Olga. Okay, let's put this in. All right. This is going to go here. Yeah, I think that's probably what it's going to look like right there. Okay. Next one. Let's remember to put it on the back first this time. Okay. This one goes there, just about. Maybe a little further down, probably. Yeah, something like that. Little shadow box. Great. Now we've got some trees, and those trees, it was nice to get them like down on this side. Again, they also had a little bit of a curl. So I think the way we should do that, we might implement this among more objects here, but we'll put a front-facing dot. Oops, my goodness. Put a front-facing dot right there. We'll put a back-facing dot here. That's probably all we need. So this part of it, this is going to stick to the front of the following layer, and it's going to stick to the back of the first layer. And sorry, but we can't both see it at the same time. Probably it goes here. Get that first one stuck down, and then the second one stuck down like that. Just put that in the front. It's not bad. I'm not a huge fan of this bit. You can kind of see that layer, but I'm not sure how we avoided that last time. Should we just move that whole thing over? It's probably fine. We'll make a little brush or like a little bush or something to go in there. Same thing on this one. We're going to put the bottom on that panel, and we're going to put the top part of this. Like, it's going to be like this bit right there. Something like that. That looks pretty good. Yeah, see that? Isn't that glaring? It just sticks out like a sore thumb. Let's make a little bush to go in there. Again, like if I put it's so bright. If I put that in there, it's really gonna stand out. I don't think we can. Could we put this one in there? Or is that just gonna look like another piece of the yeah. Well, maybe we can put a piece that is like the brightest foreground bit. Maybe it's like a big piece of grass or something. Maybe it's like, yeah, just measuring like how tall we need to make it. It's like, I don't know, like this big all the way across. what is that, 1.25 inches? Okay. Great. So this is going to be, I'm going to flip this over. So this is going to be like there's going to be a little wiggly grass line in here. So there's a lot of little zigzags. Here's a trick that I've learned. Cut all of one side of the zigzags and then go back and cut all the other side of the zigzags. It's going to be so much faster. Okay. Okay. That's going to be nice. So just to make this a little more interesting, let's go in and kind of like give some angles on these, give them a little twist, just give them some dimension. Just because we've got a shadow box doesn't mean that we don't have any dimension in our finished piece. In fact, we'll be looking more closely for that dimension. Okay. And we're going to put that inside that second layer. You know, my head wasn't screwed on. So I'm just, again, warping that grass layer to give it a little bit of extra dimension through that one, through that layer there. I mean, it's not half bad. Let's see what the little characters look like in there. Did I mess up my area of, yeah, so they're a little bit more limited now. Let's just put them in this one. Oh no, his eyes fell off. Oh no, God. Oh God. Oh, poor fox. Wolf. It's a tragedy. Right here at the very end, the grand reveal. Oh my gosh. Well, the blue tip was working great yesterday. It really looks like Wolf is very concerned about Fox's eyes being missing. But there you go. So that looks better. I think a little framer on the outside might also work, but having it be pretty light. Let's see what that looks like when it's just the image. So it's nice, right? Like it kind of gives the same kind of idea as the white line around, like the white border around the puppets themselves. I kind of like that look. So now, what I might do after this is just to play around with these lights that I've got here and see how that changes the look of the thing. These are just some IKEA LED lamps, like clip-on lamps, and I've put a little piece of wax paper around the front of it as a diffusion. It gives the shadows a little bit less intensity. But you can see, I've got two of them here. I can play a little bit with, yeah, maybe I want one that's like right here. One that's right in there. I mean, it's not bad. This camera, this is not the camera that I will be using. It's just too low quality. Even though it is built as a 1080p camera, it's from a while ago. So there you go. I think this might be a good place to stop. I think we're learning some really great things about what looks good and some simple ways to get a little more dimension in each of these boxes. So I think like what we'll be building is ultimately like a couple, probably a lot of these little boxes, but we can make it, we don't have to make the actual box shape out of paper. We can do that with foam. And the layering with some curving on that paper in the back really comes across great. And the layering, like playing with the shadows in here, is really worthwhile. These characters stand out great against the, oh my gosh, the fox's mouth. They stand out really nicely, and I think it might actually look really cool in the end. Again, we're not, you know, the goal is not to do like a whole puppet show like, I'm a fox, I'm a wolf, I'm a fox, I'm a wolf. But to do one or two movements, you know, like the shot might just be Wolf approaches Fox and looks down at him. Like that's all the shot is. And we cut to another shot that's a little more detail, like it's detail oriented. Each shot is action oriented. Like that's a pretty good look at what sort of how things have changed. And we improvised a little bit, and we got some information from the pieces themselves after we built them, which I thought is pretty nice. I think that's going to look good. So we'll put this back. We'll put this aside for now. I hope that you continue to follow along as I figure out what this is going to be. I really appreciate you tuning in today, and I hope you learned some things. I hope you got inspired to make something of your own. The final version of this movie will premiere sometime early in 2021, And I hope you tune in. Of course, if you tune into Puppet Time Online, there's no way I'm not going to be talking about this more. I'm really excited about this movie. I'm really excited about this original piece. I actually don't do a whole lot of original work. I am really happy to design for other people and for other productions and to help other stories come to life. I don't often get a chance to do something of my own or my own story. So I'm really excited about this opportunity. So I'm really happy that you joined me here, and hopefully you join us next week. We'll have another guest on to talk about puppetry and the business of puppetry, and we'll have another cool person on to talk about what they do. And I guess another shout out to Heather Henson's Handmade Puppet Dreams mini commissions project. There's a whole cohort of filmmakers that are in this granting cycle, and there's going to be some incredible work. I'm really proud to be a part of this group, to be included in this group of people, this group of artists. So be sure to check them out and watch some of the other Handmade Puppet Dreams films on Amazon Prime Video. I think that's my shout out for today. Thanks again for joining us. And just remember, you don't have to do everything to do something. We'll see you next time.